Verse 16. And it came to pass when the sun went down, behold, there was the smoke as of a furnace. And the angels who had the portions of the sacrifice ascended from the top of the smoking furnace. And the angel took with me his right hand and set me upon the right wing of the pigeon and set himself on the left wing of the turtle dove. So they rode the birds that had been brought. They rode them, neither of which birds had been slaughtered. And he bore me to the borders of the flaming fire, and we ascended up many winds to the heavens which were above the firmament. So the angels, there were angels there who were given the portions of the sacrifices to essentially probably to accompany them or, guide them up into heaven. And Abraham and Joel got on the wings of these birds to ride them, and they started ascending above the firmament toward the heavens. And I saw in the air on the heights to which we ascended a strong light, impossible to describe, and within the light a fiercely burning fire of people, many people, of male appearance, constantly changing in aspect and form, running and being transformed, and worshiping and crying with the sound of words I could not recognize. So strangely formed people he saw, they were like fire, they were hot, they were bright in color and appearance. Seemed to be changing in aspect and form, like he couldn't identify them. But they were all worshiping and crying with the sound of words he couldn't recognize. And I said to the angel, verse 17, why have you brought me up here? Because my eyes cannot see distinctly. I am growing weak, and my spirit is departing from me. He said, remain close by me. Do not fear, for the one whom you cannot see is now coming towards us with a great voice of holiness. Even the eternal one who loves you, but you yourself cannot see him. It's the eternal one. This is God, the Father, coming close. But you cannot see him. You must not allow your spirit to grow faint on account of the choirs of those who cry out, for I am with you to strengthen you. So these choirs were singing praise to God that he's seen in heaven. And Joel is saying, strengthen yourself. It's going to be hard for you to stay in control of your faculties because this is so powerful, being in this part of heaven where God is. Verse 18, and while he was thus speaking, fire came about all of us. And there was a voice within the fire like the sound of many waters. Now, I underline that because it's one of these things you see in multiple writings all over the place, including the scriptures in Revelation. God's voice, apparently, when you hear it in heaven, sounds like the voice of many waters speaking. I don't know exactly what that means, but you can imagine echoes or like waves crashing, but his voice crashes on you like water, like many waters. It's just something that's almost unexplainable. But I can't wait to hear that voice in heaven. Like the sound of the sea in a violent motion. And I desired to fall down there and worship. And I saw the angel who was with me bowed his head and worshipped. But the surface of the high place where I seemed to be standing changed its inclination constantly, rolling as the great waves on the surface of the sea. So he's in this place it looks like water almost, like waves are rolling. And he's hearing the voice of God. Verse 19, the angel said, worship Abraham and utter the song which I shall now teach you. Utter it without ceasing, that is, without pause, in one continuous strain from beginning to end. And the song which he taught me to sing had words appropriate to the land in which we stood. For each land or level in heaven has its own song of praise. And only those who dwell there know how to utter it. And those upon the earth cannot know or utter it except they be taught by messengers of heaven, by angels. The people on earth do not know the songs that are sung in heaven. Only the angels do. And the words of that song were of this import and signification: eternal, mighty, holy El, God only supreme. You who are the self-originated, the beginningless one, incorruptible, spotless, uncreated, immaculate, immortal, self-complete, self-illuminating, without father or mother, unbegotten, exalted, fiery one, lover of men, benevolent one, bountiful one, jealous over me, and very compassionate, Eli, my God, eternal, Jehovah Sabaoth, very glorious, El, Jael. You are the one whom my soul has loved. It's beautiful. Eternal protector, shining like fire, whose voice is like the thunder, whose look is like the lightning. You are the all-seeing one, who receives the prayers of all such as honor you and turn away the requests of those who embarrass you with their provocations, who dissolves the confusions of the world which arise from the ungodly and the righteous, mixed up in the confusion of the corruptible age. You now understand where the confusion of this world and this life comes from. It comes from sinful man. It doesn't come from God. It comes from Satan. This corruptible age, it's corruptible down here. That's why it's so crazy. That's why there's evil things. People always say, well, how can God let evil things happen? Well, it's corrupted down here by men, by sin. Shine, O Lord, shine as a light, even as that light with which you clothed yourself on the first day of creation. Shine as the light of the morning on your creatures, and let it be day upon earth. For in these heavenly dwelling places there is no need for any other light than the unspeakable splendor from the light of your countenance. O answer my prayer, O be well pleased with it. O accept my sacrifice, which you have prepared for me to offer. Accept me favorably, and show me, teach me all that you have promised. And while I was still reciting the song, the mouth of the fire that was on the surface rose up on high. And I heard a voice like the roaring of the sea, nor did it cease upon account of the rich abundance of the fire. And as the fire raised itself up, ascending to the heights, I saw under the fire a throne of fire, and round about it the watchfulness of many eyes. Even the all-seeing ones reciting their song, and under the throne 4 fiery living ones singing. This is the cherubim. This is the Ophanim, the eyes, the thrones. This is God's throne, and it's exactly like is recounted in Ezekiel. There's no difference here. It's recounting the exact same things as in Ezekiel. So this is, again, one of those things, it's like you see it in so many different writings now. Not only the Bible, now in a different piece of the Apocrypha, a different pseudepigrapha, different writing over here. And then it's like, wow, they all match. It's not like if things were being just randomly pulled out of thin air and made up as people went through the centuries, then you would get different explanations, different descriptions. You don't. It's the same. The 4 fiery living ones singing, and their appearance was one, and each one had 4 faces. Such was the appearance of their countenance, that each one had the face of a lion, and a man, and an ox, and an eagle. Just like, what? Just like in Ezekiel. And because of their 4 heads upon their bodies, they had 16 faces. Each one had 3 pairs of wings from their shoulders, their sides, their loins. And with these wings from the shoulders, they covered their faces. And with the wings from their loins, they covered their feet. And the 2 middle wings were spread out for flying, straight forward. Verse 21. It came to pass when they had ended their singing, they looked at one another and threatened one another. This is what we talked about earlier. Joel said he was partly responsible in heaven for keeping the cherubim from destroying one another with their gaze. And it came to pass when the angel who was with me saw that they were threatening each other, he left me and went running to them and turned the countenance of them away from each other, in order that they may not look upon each other. And he began to teach them the song of peace that has its origin in the Eternal One. What an incredible sight to see. This interchange and work of these angels in heaven at the throne of God. And as I stood alone and looked, I saw behind the living ones Chaim, a chariot with fiery wheels, and each wheel, each Ophanim, full of eyes round about. and over the wheels was the throne which I had seen, and which was covered with fire, and the fire encircled it round about. And behold, an indescribable fire contained a mighty fiery host, and I heard its holy voice like the voice of a man. And a voice came to me out of the midst of the fire, saying, Abraham, Abraham. I answered, saying, Here am I. And he said, Consider the expanses which are under the firmament on which you are now placed, and see how on no single expanse is there any other than the one whom you have sought, even the one who loves you. God's saying, now there's context that helps in all these different writings. He's saying each expanse he's talking about the levels of heaven. He says, consider that on each level of heaven, there is no one like me. I am the only one. I'm the one you love, and I'm the one that loves you. I'm the eternal one. I'm God the Father. He's saying, I'm the one you've sought. There's no one else in heaven like me. Verse 25, and while he was speaking, the expanses opened, and there were below me the heavens, the other levels of heaven. I saw upon the seventh firmament, upon which I stood, a fire widely extended, the light which is the treasury of life, the dew with which God will awaken the dead, and the spirits of the departed righteous, and the spirits of those souls who have yet to be born, and judgment and righteousness, peace and blessing, and an innumerable company of angels and the living ones, the power of the invisible glory that sat above the living ones. So he's describing all the things in all the levels of heaven that he can see from there. Verse 26, I looked downwards from the mountain on which I stood to the sixth firmament. I saw there a multitude of angels of pure spirit without bodies, whose duty was to carry out the commands of the fiery angels who were on the seventh firmament. And then this word firmament he's using really, there may be division. I mean, there is divisions between the levels of heaven, but you can think of it as kind of like the level. He's looking into the sixth level of heaven, below where he is. And behold, upon this sixth firmament there were no other powers of any form except angels of pure spirit. Verse 27, and he commanded that the sixth firmament should be removed from my sight, and I saw the fifth firmament, and the powers of the stars that carry out the commands laid upon them. The elements of the earth obeyed them. Verse 28, the eternal mighty one said to me, Abraham, Abraham. I said, Here am I. He said to me, Consider from above the stars which are beneath you, and the number of them for me, and make known to me their number. And I said, How can I? For I am but a man of the dust of the earth. He said to me, As the number of the stars and their power, so will I make your seed a nation, and a people set apart for me as my own inheritance, as distinct from that of Azazel. And yet I include Azazel in my house. Wow. So Abraham is shown the stars by God. We know about this from the covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, right? God shows Abraham the stars. Well, whenever I always heard that, I thought, wow, Abraham's sitting down on the ground. He's looking up at the stars, and God says, See the stars, Abraham. No, Abraham was in heaven when he received that vision and was shown the stars. He was in the seventh heaven with God at his throne, and God was showing him the fifth heaven where the stars were. Oh my gosh. It's so awesome. It's so incredible. Abraham was looking down at the stars, not up at the stars. Do you get the power of that? Oh, I love God. I love studying this stuff. I love understanding more about the power and majesty of the heavens where God sits. I will make your seed a nation and a people set apart for me as mine own inheritance. Now this statement, and yet I include Azazel in my house, probably would take a little more research for me to really understand what that is exactly meaning. But, the word house, I don't think probably in the original languages is a perfect interpretation. It's not like God's not saying, I don't know, that. I think it just means that Azazel was part of his created angels, essentially. his inheritance, God says, my inheritance is the people I'm setting apart from you, and distinct from that of Azazel. So God's inheritance is the Israelites. Azazel's is the wicked. And the yet I include Azazel in my house. I'm not sure about the correct interpretation of that phrase right there. So I don't think it means anything dubious, like, that God, it doesn't mean anything like a universalism, like God's going to save Azazel and save the wicked or anything like that. It's, I think, just an inclusion that Azazel was a part of his planned order of things, essentially. And his plan for Israel is that God inherits them. God inherits Abraham's seed, the seed of faith, and that Azazel is going to inherit the seed of wickedness, of perdition, of destruction. And so I think in that sense, it's just saying that Azazel's part of this plan too. But the righteous are coming up here with me. The wicked are going with Azazel. Verse 29, I said, O eternal mighty one, let your servant speak before you, and let not your anger be kindled against your chosen one. For behold, I came up hither, Azazel inveighed against me. How then, while he is not now before you, can you constitute yourself with him? And he said to me, look now beneath your feet at the firmaments and understand the creation represented and foreshadowed in this expanse, the creatures who exist upon it, and the ages prepared for it. Verse 31, I saw beneath the surface of my feet, even beneath the sixth heaven, and what was there, and the earth and its fruits, and what moved upon it, and its animate beings, and the power of men, and the ungodliness of some of its souls, and the righteous deeds of other souls. I saw the lower regions, and the perdition therein, the abyss and its torments. So now God has essentially moved the heavens out of the way for Abraham to see down into Hades, into the underworld, the abyss, the torments. And I saw the sea and its islands and its monsters and fishes and Leviathan and his dominion. Now, just so you know, Satanists worship Leviathan. The Baphomet and the pentagram symbol of the witches and the Satanists has the name of Leviathan written around it. They worship Leviathan as part of the underworld, the wicked. He's not synonymous with Satan, but the power of Leviathan is something that Satanists worship and covet. Leviathan and his dominion, his camping ground, his caves, the world that lay above him, his movements and the destructions of the world on his account. And I saw there the streams and the rivers, the rising of their waters, the windings of their courses. And I saw the Garden of Eden and its fruits, the source of the river that issues from it, the trees and their blossoms, the one who behaved righteously. And I saw therein their food, their blessedness. I saw there a great multitude, men and women and children, half of them on the right side of the vision, half of them on the left side of the vision. Verse 32, and I said, O eternal mighty one, what is this vision and the picture of the creatures? He said, this is my will for those who exist in the divine world, council. Don't get tripped up by that phrase, but the divine world, essentially. For thus it seemed well-pleasing in my sight, and so afterwards I commanded them, or to them through my word. So it came to pass that whatever I determined to be was already planned beforehand in this picture vision before you, and it has stood before me before it was created, as you have seen. So God's giving this picture. Just realize that's what's happening. It's a vision. And I think he's going to explain the different people on the right and the left in just a second. I said, Lord, mighty and eternal, who are the people in this picture on this side and that? He said to me, those on the left are those born before your day and afterwards, some destined for judgment and restoration, others destined for vengeance and cutting off at the end of the age. But those on the right side of the picture, they are the people who have been set apart for me, and whom I have ordained to be born of your line and called my people, even some of those who derive from Azazel. All right, so the ones on the right side of the picture, the people have been set apart for me, whom I have ordained to be born of your line. the seed of Abraham, the seed of righteousness, called my people, even some of those who derive from Azazel. Why would he say that? Because those who derive, quote unquote, from Azazel, that would be not the Israelites, the Gentile nations. Azazel is the prince of this world, right? So the Gentile nations were seen to be overseen and derived from Azazel's people. But God says they will be included. The people on the right, the people set apart, include not only the house of Israel, but those from the Gentile nations that have accepted him and believed in him and followed his teaching and commandments. So this is another proof that Israel only is false garbage, because it was obvious that people out of all nations would be included as the righteous, as the seed of Abraham, the people set apart for God. Okay? Verse 34, now look again in the picture and see who it is who seduced Eve, and what is the fruit of the tree, and you will know what it is, what is to be, and how it shall be with your seed among the people at the end of the days of the age. And all that you cannot understand I will make known to you, for you are well-pleasing in my sight. And I will tell you of those things which are kept in my heart. So now he's showing in the Garden of Eden and who deceived Eve at the tree in the garden. I looked into the picture. Again, this is a vision God's giving him. And my eyes ran to the side of the garden. I saw a man of imposing height and mighty in stature, incomparable in aspect. And he was embracing a woman who likewise approximated to the aspect of his size and stature. This is talking about Adam and Eve, saying that they were massively big. They were not the size of normal humans. They were big, giant, essentially. They were not Nephilim, but these original humans, as created by God, were huge in aspect. They were not like we are now. And they were standing under a tree of the Garden of Eden. The fruit of this tree was like a bunch of grapes of the vine. And by the way, there's other writings that talk about the fruit that was eaten, that was off limits to Eve and Adam, that it was essentially, it was the grapes, it was the vine. That's the fruit that was eaten, that gave the knowledge of good and evil. And it's the same fruit that we make alcoholic beverages out of, that we make the wine out of, and that Noah got drunk with. That's the story that's in another writing, is that the vine from this plant, this tree, got washed out of heaven during the flood, and that Noah found it after the flood and planted it, and then made his vineyards from that plant and became drunk off of them. You remember that story? And standing behind the tree was one who had the aspect of a serpent, having hands and feet like a man, and wings on his shoulders. This is Satan. This is Azazel. 6 pairs of wings. There were 6 wings on the right and 6 on the left. And I continued looking and saw the man and the woman eating the fruit of the tree. Verse 36. I said, who are these who are embracing, and who is the one between them behind the tree and the fruit that they are eating? And God says, or Joel says, this is the counsel of the world. I think this is God at this point speaking. This is the counsel of the world. This is Adam, and this one on who is their desire upon the earth is Eve. But he who is between them represents ungodliness, and their beginnings on the way to perdition, Azazel. So this is Satan, this is Azazel, one and the same. Verse 37, I said, Eternal Mighty One, why have you given such as him the power to destroy the generations of men and their works upon the earth? And he said to me, those who will to do evil over them, I gave him power, even to be beloved of them. So those, again, this is talking about what our existence and reality is for humankind. Those who want to do evil, humans who want to do evil, he gives Satan power over them on earth. He even makes those people love Satan. Do you see now how sin works? And how you see some wicked people, some evil people in the world nowadays, and you say, how can they think like that? How can they want that? Because they are the children of their father, the devil. God gave Satan power over those people. Do you understand how that works? And this has nothing to do with Calvinism. This is not election, like you're elected to Satan or you're elected to God. God's telling you, he's telling you in these passages, when you start obeying Satan, Satan gains power over you. Okay? It's your choice. When you start doing that, he gets power over you. At some point, it may end up being that you love Satan if you are a wicked person. You go down that slope and you end up at that end where you love the things of the world, you love the things of Satan over the things of God. Whereas if you go the other direction, Satan does not have power over you. He has no power over you if you seek the things of God. This is the nature of human existence, and it's one that most Christians ignore and are totally oblivious to. You're in this gambit. There is God and Satan. Satan's warring for your soul daily. He wants to destroy you. Verse 38, I answered and said, O eternal mighty one, wherefore is it that your will, why is it your will that evil should be desired in the hearts of men, since you are indeed angered over what you see? Is it your will? It is your will, and you are angry with him who is doing what is unprofitable in your counsel. So Abraham's saying a question that many people ask today. That is, God, why do you allow Satan to have power over men? Doesn't that anger you? Why? How can it be your will and that is the case, and then you also are angry with the people that turn away from you? So God answers this question, verse 39. He said to me, I am angered by mankind on your account, and on account of those who shall be of your family hereafter. For as you can see in the picture, the burden of destiny is placed upon them. So again, Calvinists move aside. The burden of your destiny is placed squarely on your shoulders. And I shall tell you what shall be, and how much shall be in the last days. Look now at everything in the picture. I looked, and I saw what was before me in creation. I saw Adam and Eve with him. I saw the cunning adversary, and Cain who acted lawlessly, through the promptings of the adversary, and I saw the slaughtered Abel, and the destruction brought about and caused upon him through the lawless one. And I saw impurity, and those who lust after it, and its pollution, and their jealousies, and the fire of their corruption in the lowest parts of the earth. And I saw the spirit of theft, and those who hasten after it, and the arrangement of their retribution, at the judgment of the great Azazel. And I saw there naked men with their foreheads against each other, and their disgrace, and the passions they had for each other, their retribution. I saw the spirit of desire, in her hand the head of every kind of lawlessness, and her scorn and contempt and waste assigned to perdition. Now, it's using the words theft and desire as words for demons, angels that essentially are the head of those things. And so that's what's happening there. It's not some ambiguous reference to nothingness, but these are actual angels that are being referenced. And I saw there, and again, he's looking into the underworld. This is hell. I saw there the likeness of the idol of jealousy, carved in woodwork, such as my father was wont to make. Abraham's father was an idol worshiper, and Abraham himself took his father's idols and burned them. So he sees a likeness of an idol of jealousy. Its body was of glittering bronze that covered the wood. And before I saw a man worshiping the idol. In front of him there was an altar. Upon the altar a boy slain in the presence of the idol. So a child sacrifice to this idol being done. And I said to him, what is this idol and this altar? And who is he who is sacrificed? What is this great building which I see, beautiful in art and design, with a beauty like that which lies beneath the throne? And God said, "Hear, Abraham, for that which you see is the temple, a copy of that which was in the heavens." That's what the temple is, by the way. Read the book of Hebrews. I think it's chapter 9, or possibly through 9 through 12. Talks about the temple is the pattern of the things in the heavens. The temple, a copy of what is in the heavens, glorious in aspect and beauty. Even as I shall give it to the sons of men to ordain a priesthood for my glorious name, in which the prayers of men shall be uttered, and sacrifices offered. But the idol that you saw is the image of jealousy set up by some of those who will come forth from your own loins in the later days. And the man who sacrifices in murder is he who pollutes my temple, and such are witnesses to the final judgment, and their lot has been set from the beginning of creation. He's talking about the Jews who would become wicked and do horrible things in the temple and make horrible sacrifices, child sacrifices, in honor of pagan gods. And they would be judged in the final judgment, he says. Therefore, it was necessary that the patterns of the things in the heavens should be purified with these. But the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ is not entered into holy places made with hands, the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him he shall appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So it's talking about Christ was the perfect sacrifice. This is exactly what the book of Hebrews says. Christ was the perfect sacrifice, the Messiah, the perfect sacrifice for sin in heaven, the one that cleanses a man in heaven. The earthly sacrifices were for the earthly system, and they were figures of the true, patterns of the true things in heavens. But the true sacrifice was Christ. Verse 45, I said, O eternal mighty one, why have you established that it should be so, and then proclaim the knowledge thereof? And he said to me, Hear, Abraham, and understand what I say to you. Answer my question, why did your father Terah not listen to your voice and not cease from his idolatrous practices together with his whole house? And I said, O eternal one, it was entirely because he did not choose to listen to my voice, and likewise I did not choose to listen to his counsel. Again, this is about self-willed, directed choices that we make. Terah, Abraham's father, he said, this is because he didn't choose to listen to me. He didn't choose to listen to you. God said to Abraham, the will of your father is within him, and your will is within you. And so also the counsel of my own will is within me. We are made after the image of God. We all have our own will to make these decisions, whether good or bad, and is ready for the coming days. My will is ready for the coming days, even before you have any knowledge of them or can see with your eyes what is the nature of them or future of them. Now look again into the picture and see how it will be with your seed. And I looked and saw, behold, the picture swayed, and from it emerged on the left side an ungodly people, and they pillaged those who were on the right side, men and women and children, and some they murdered, others they kept as slaves. And I saw them run towards them through the generations, the 4 generations or time periods, like as in Daniel. And remember in Daniel, the prophecies, not before chapter 9, there's prophecies of the 4 kingdoms, right? The 4 beasts or animals. And I'm not going to remember them right. I think it's leopard, bear. I can't remember all of them. But I think you go back there, you'll find it was the 4 time periods that are being talked about in Daniel's prophecy there. And that's what it's talking about here. I saw them run towards them through the 4 generations. They burned the temple with fire, and the holy things that were therein were all plundered. That's exactly what happened in 70 AD. The temple was burned with fire. Holy things were plundered by the Romans. And I said, O eternal one, behold, the people who shall spring from me you have accepted are plundered by these ungodly men, and some are killed, while others they hold captives as slaves. And the temple they have burned with fire, and the beautiful things therein they have robbed and destroyed. If this is to be, why have you so torn my heart? And he said to me, What you have seen shall happen on account of your seed, even those who anger me by reason of the idol statue which you saw, and on account of the human sacrifice in the picture. Through their evil zeal and schemes in the temple, as you saw it, so it shall be. And I said, O eternal mighty one, may these works of evil wrought in ungodliness now pass by, and rather show me those who fulfilled the commandments, even the works of righteousness, for of a truth you can do this. So it was about the Israelites becoming wicked, and some of them turning to pagan idols and Satan and sacrificing children in the temple in secret. Verse 51, he said to me, the days of the righteous are seen in kind by the lives of those righteous rulers who shall arise, and whom I have created to rule at the times appointed. But know this, that out of them shall arise others who care only for their own interests, even of the type that I have already shown you. They became wicked. And I answered and said, O mighty one, hallowed be your power, be favorable to my petition, and show me, because for this reason you have brought me up here, whether what I saw shall happen to them for a long time. And in the fourth descent of 100 years, even 1 hour of the age, it says, the same is 100 years, there shall be misfortune among the nations. But also for 1 hour there shall be mercy and honor among the nations. And I said, O eternal one, how long are the hours of the age? He said, 12 hours I have ordained for this present age of ungodliness, to rule among the nations and within your seed, and until the end of times it shall be even as you saw. And now reckon and understand and look again into the picture. The 12 ages or time fragments of the Jewish age is well known in other writings. And I've gone into it in other videos, particularly the one about the ladder of Jacob, if you want to look that up. But another thing that's just consistent through these writings, there was 12 sections of the Jewish age, and he's talking about that exact thing here. And that was up until the time of Christ, from Abraham to Christ. And I looked and saw a man going out from the left side of the nations, meaning the Gentile nations, or the nations of Azazel. And there went out men and women and children from the side of nations, many hosts, and worshipped him. And while I still looked, there came many from the right side, and some of these insulted him, and some even struck him, but others worshipped him. And as I watched, I saw Azazel approach him and kissed him on the face and stood behind him. So this is a man going out from the left side of the nations. O eternal one, who is this man insulted and beaten, who is worshipped by the nations and kissed by Azazel? He answered and said, Hear, Abraham, the man you saw insulted and beaten and worshipped is the relief granted by the nations to the people who proceed from you in the last days, in the 12th hour of the age of ungodliness. But in the 12th hour of my final age, I will set up this man from your generation, whom you saw issue from among my people, and all who follow will become like this man. And such as are called by me will join to others, even those who will to change within themselves. This is Jesus Christ he's talking about. He's going to lead. And as for those who emerge from the left side of the picture, meaning the Gentiles, the meaning is this: there shall be many from among the nations who shall set their hopes upon him, upon Christ. But as for those whom you saw from your seed on the right of the picture, who insulted him and struck him, many shall be offended in him, but some shall worship him. He shall test those of your seed who have worshipped him in the 12th hour at the end, with a view to shortening the age of ungodliness. So some would follow Christ, some would reject him, and they would be tested. And before the age of unrighteousness the age of righteousness begins to grow, meaning the new age of Messiah after Jesus Christ, my judgment shall come upon the lawless people through the people of your seed who have been separated unto me. And in those days I will bring upon all creatures of the earth 10 plagues through misfortune and disease, and the sighing of their grief. And this shall be brought upon the generations of men on account of the provocation and corruption of mankind, whereby they provoke me. And then shall the righteous men of your seed survive in the number which is kept secret by me. What number is that? Of the righteous men of Abraham's seed? Could that be the 144,000 in Revelation chapter, I believe it's chapter 7 or 6? The 144,000 Jews from each tribe, kept in secret by God until that time, and will hasten the coming of the glory of my name to that place prepared beforehand for them, which you saw devastated in the picture. And they shall live and be established by the sacrifices of righteousness in the age of the righteous. They shall rejoice in me continually, and receive those who return to me in repentance. For great shall be the inner torment of those who have despitefully used them in this world, as they observe the honor placed upon my own in the day of glory. So the righteous would be rewarded, the wicked will be destroyed. Now, just so you kind of have the context, Isaiah 9:6 talks about this same stuff. The father of the coming age is the phrase used for Christ in Isaiah 9:6 when you study the Greek in the Septuagint and you study the Hebrew. This is a phrase that is revealed if you study those ancient sources. That Jesus Christ was not only wonderful, a counselor, a mighty deity, a ruler of peace, but he was the father of the coming age. And this is what is being talked about in the Apocalypse of Abraham. This vision that Abraham got was about all of Jewish history leading up to Christ and the coming age of righteousness in Christ. The everlasting Father is in many English translations, but that is a mistranslation, I believe. When you go to the oldest texts and the Greek and the Hebrew, you see that it's actually Jesus was the father of the coming age, meaning he was the host of the age of righteousness, Jesus Christ, which started when he came and in 70 AD was essentially procured. Verse 58 of the Apocalypse here, see Abraham, behold, I am with you to the end of the age. But while he was still speaking to me, I found myself once again upon the earth. He had been taken to heaven on these birds with Joel, but now he's back on earth. I said, O Eternal One, I am no longer in the glory that is on high, and there is one matter that my soul longed to know and understand, which has not been revealed to me. And Jesus, by the way, that phrase, I am with you to the end of the age, is interesting from God. Just noting that in Matthew 28, verse 20, this is when Jesus is about to ascend, and he tells the disciples, lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. It's just an interesting comparison that both Jesus the Son and God the Father said a similar thing in that phrase, I'm with you always to the end of the age. But this one thing that Abraham wanted to know after he had been put back on earth, he says to God, there's one thing I wanted to know. And he says, what your heart desired I will tell you, because you have sought to see the 10 plagues, which I have prepared for the godless nations. These 10 plagues, by the way, played out before 70 AD against the godless nations. Okay, that's what it's being talked about. The 10 plagues coming upon the nations before Christ essentially took over and inherited the earth. And all this occurred by 70 AD. The plagues which I have prepared for the godless nations have been predetermined at the passing over of the 12th hour of the age of the earth. Hear therefore what I divulge, and soon it shall come to pass, the distressing pain of sickness, the conflagration of many cities, the destruction and pestilence of animals, the hunger of the whole world, famines, the destruction among rulers by earthquake and sword, the multiplication of hail and snow, wild beasts, hunger and pestilence, punishment by the sword, and thunder and voices and destructive earthquakes. All these things happened in the first century, by the way. I've got other videos that detail these different events and the years in which they occurred. So that all of this occurred. All of these different things. And then I will sound the trumpet out of the air and will send my elect one, Jesus Christ, out of the heavens into the clouds, having in him all my power in one measure. And I will give those who have covered me with mockery to the scorn of the coming age. And I have prepared them to be food for the fire of Hades and perpetual flight through the air in the underworld. Those who have covered me with mockery, the wicked from before the time of Christ, they were food for the fire of Hades and in perpetual flight in the underworld. No rest for them. They shall see the righteousness of the Creator and those whom he now honors, and they shall be ashamed. For I had hoped they would come to me in repentance, rather than loving strange gods, but they forsook the mighty Lord and went the way they willed to go. Hear therefore, Abraham, and see and behold, in the 7th generation from you shall they leave the land of their slavery after they have been ill-treated for, as it were, an hour of the age of ungodliness. And the nation whom they serve I will judge. Well, this is talking about Egypt and the Exodus, right? So here's that genealogy again. Abraham is the 1st generation, Isaac 2nd, Jacob 3rd, Levi 4th, Jochebed 5th, Amram 6th, and 7th is Moses. In that generation, God led the people out of Egypt. So it's exactly as this vision was given to Abraham what was going to happen. So he knew. So that's the passage out of the Apocalypse of Abraham. I encourage you to read the entire writing. It's incredible. The Ascension of Isaiah is another writing that talks about some of the same things as far as heaven and what's in heaven. And my video about heaven goes into that a lot. But this is kind of a summary now of this vision. So this vision apparently was much more detailed and amazing than we realize when we read the Bible, right? Genesis 15 does not give us the details of the vision, but man, this writing sure went through all of it. Abraham received an amazing vision, a view of God's entire plan for the nation of Israel and the salvation that was to come through Christ for the righteous from Israel and all nations. This vision gave us a lot of information about our state, our status as humans on earth, and the relationship between God and his people and Azazel or Satan and his people, and why Satan has power over wickedness, and what the point is of that. It's to give the wicked their desire, so that if you desire wickedness, you end up with Satan and you end up with destruction, which is what Satan, it's his portion. God has built this way for the reason of allowing you to choose and then giving you the results, the consequences of that choice. Because you are made in his image with a choice. There is no Calvinistic idea here in any of these writings or the Old Testament or the Bible generally about that you are elected and you can't choose a direction. No, that is patently false. Dispensationalism here cannot account for these visions of these patriarchs. Dispensationalism falls apart in light of these writings. So dispensationalism, the dispensational view of the Bible is just that. It's a view of only the Bible, because if you took any of the other writings, you'd have to abandon dispensationalism. It is imposed upon the Bible, where the Bible, it even fights against the idea of dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is an idea that's imposed on the Bible. And these visions and this writing, the Apocalypse of Abraham, and many other writings just destroy dispensationalism. Jesus, in this writing, in this vision, was coming to usher in and rule over the age of righteousness. That was to start when he came and was procured. He took all the authority of the nations by 70 AD, and then the age of righteousness of Messiah started. Before that, it was the Jewish age. There were the 12 parts that we read about here and are in other writings like the Ladder of Jacob. But Jesus was coming to usher in the new age of righteousness, and that's what he did. So that's really it, guys. Oh, there we go. Let me get that down. Now, I just appreciate you sticking with. This has been a long one. But sometimes I read these things, and I guess I want you guys to see what I see when I read these things. And the only way you can do that is you really go through them. And we didn't even read all this writing. I know it was long, but man, you gain so much insight by going and digging through these writings. So I hope you feel that's valuable. To me, it's so valuable. But only if you do that work. And you know, I'm trying to put that out in front of you in these videos. So these videos are a good way. You know, actually, if you sat down and read the Apocalypse of Abraham, it probably would have taken you maybe less time than watching this video. But of course, we're discussing some of the points in there. But I'm just saying, you know, that is more valuable in my estimation than watching my videos. But, you know, my videos are a great way to get introduced to these things too, and see them from my perspective if that's what you're looking for. But just appreciate you spending the time. It's not easy. It takes some time. But I hope you've enjoyed just touring through this information. This vision was apocalyptic, and it was profound, and it was huge, and we just don't get that in the scriptures. We don't understand because it's so abbreviated in Genesis' account. So we have to find some of these other writings that have that information, and this is the one. The Apocalypse of Abraham has that, and has really showed us what Abraham saw during that time and what the point was of those sacrifices, right? The sacrifices of the meat were for the angels, and the birds were for them to fly to heaven during this vision, so that Joel could take Abraham to heaven to talk with God about the Jewish nation and what was going to come of it. Just incredible. Thank you again for your time and your support. God bless you. Take care.